Hello everyone, I welcome you to my YouTube channel Professor Civil Mandal. Here I basically speak about civil engineering and you will find my various video lectures on various topics of civil engineering over here. In the last video lecture, we were discussing about the fluid dynamics and which included the forces acting in fluid in motion. We also derived the Euler's equation of motion. On fluids, we also derived the Bernoulli's equation. In a streamline, we also went for the application of the Bernoulli's equation on venturimeter. In this video lecture, we will start about the application. We will actually resume the application of the Bernoulli's equation in orifice meter. And if you have not gone through the previous parts, so I would request you to first go through the previous video lecture whose link is given in the description and then proceed to this one. So like venturimeter, orifice meter is another device used for measuring the rate of flow of fluid through a pipe. Orifice meter is also known as the orifice plate, so it has a separate name also, orifice plate, and you will find this type of devices in your any fluid mechanics lab, and these are basically used for measuring the rate of a flow of fluid through a pipe, both venturimeter and orifice meter, and also we will study pitot tube that is also used for the same purpose. Orifice meter works on the principle of Bernoulli's equation and continuity equation. So just like venturimeter, orifice meter also works on the principle of Bernoulli's equation and continuity equation. Orifice meter is less costly as compared to the venturimeter. Venturimeter is also very reliable fluid measuring device. There are some pressure losses in venturimeter and it is usually used in larger volume liquid and gas flows. Venturimeter is expensive due to complexity of its design. Therefore, in order to determine the rate of flow through the small pipes, orifice meter is better to use as a venturimeter. So if you are asked why orifice meter is better than the venturimeter, then you can go through this particular paragraph. Also it gives you the difference between the orifice meter and a venturimeter. So you can say that orifice meter is less costly, whereas venturimeter is costly, and venturimeter is has some pressure losses and used for large volume of liquid and gas flows, whereas orifice meter is used for smaller volumes, and due to the venturimeter has got complexity in design, and therefore in order to determine the rate of flow of liquid through small pipelines, orifice meter is better to use as compared to venturimeter. So this will give you the correct answer why orifice meter is better than venturimeter. Now orifice meter consists of one flat circular plate, and this circular plate will have one circular edge hole bored in it. This is why this is also known as the orifice plate. So it has got one circular flat plate and the plate will have one circular edge hole bored in it. The circular edge hole is termed as the orifice. So just let's see the diagram. See, here is the diagram. Okay, just let's continue reading for a little more. Next is diameter of orifice will be 0.5 times of the diameter of the pipe which fluid is flowing through. It may vary from 0.4 to 0.8 times of diameter also. So it is in general taken to be 0.5 times of the diameter of the pipe, the diameter of orifice, and it also may vary from 0.4 to 0.8 times. So orifice plate is installed in pipe between the two flange of pipe. Orifice will restrict the flow of fluid and will reduce across the cross-sectional area of flow passage. So this thing is quite similar to the venturimeter, and a differential pressure will be developed across the orifice plate, and due to the creation of this pressure difference we will be able to determine the rate of fluid flow through the pipe. So we studied about the reason why we use the venturimeter as a flow measuring device. There is quite similar kind of reason why orifice plate is will be used for flow measuring, and it is because there is a reduction of the cross sectional area, and this causes a differential pressure across the orifice plate, and due to this pressure creation, difference of pressure creation, we will be able to determine the rate of fluid flow through the pipe. Types of orifice meter. Orifice are usually of concentric types, that is, the orifice will be concentric with the pipeline, but there are few more designs available as mentioned here. So in general, if this is the pipeline, the orifice will be somewhat like this. So if this is the pipeline, this will be the orifice. So in this case you will say that it is concentric, but other than that there are some more designs available. This one is eccentric. If suppose the orifice is at one center of the pipe and or is away from the center of the pipe. Sharp edged orifice, segmental orifice, and conical orifice plate. So now we will derive the rate of flow through the orifice meter. So here I have made a diagram of an orifice meter, and this is the orifice part of the orifice meter, and flow is coming from here to here, and I have taken two sections, section 1 and section 2, and suppose the pipe has a diameter capital D, and that is equal to D1. And now in these two sections, section 1 and 2, I will be fitting a differential manometer, and at the upstream part it will be at a distance of 2D from the orifice. Suppose this is the orifice, this particular dark and bold line is the orifice. From here at 2D distance will be the section 1, and the differential manometer will be placed, and here also the differential manometer will be placed at section 2, and it is at a distance of D by 2 from the orifice, where D is the diameter of the pipe and which is equal to D1. D1 is the area of the cross section at section 1. Now as D1 is the area of the cross section 1, so D1 is the diameter of the cross section 1, A1 will be the area of the cross section 1. Similarly, if D2 is the diameter of cross section 2, then A2 will be the area of cross section 2. Again, P1 and V1 are the assumed pressure and velocity at section 1, and P2 and V2 are the assumed pressure and velocity at section 2. So whenever you are making this derivation for a subjective paper, you must write about each and every term what you are assuming. Now just let us recall the Bernoulli section and apply it in section 1 and section 2. So what was Bernoulli's equation? In an incompressible ideal fluid, when the flow is steady and continuous, the sum of the pressure energy, kinetic energy and potential energy will be constant along a streamline. So it is a streamline flow, and 4 assumptions are made, and these assumptions are similar to Venturi meter, because both Venturi meter and orifice meter are derived on the basic application of the Bernoulli's equation. So I have assumptions similar to the Venturi meter, and they are that the fluid is ideal, the inviscid and incompressible, the fluid is steady and continuous, the fluid flow is irrotational, and this inner surface is frictionless. Now as we are applying Bernoulli's equation, just let us apply the Bernoulli's equation for section 1 and 2. So it will look like P1 upon rho g plus V1 square upon 2g plus Z1 will be equal to P2 upon rho g plus V2 square upon 2g plus Z2. So this is by application of Bernoulli's equation. So let's just do one thing. We take the velocity terms on one side and we keep the pressure and the elevation terms on one side. So it will be like P1 upon rho g plus Z1 and I will take P2 upon rho g and Z2 in this side, and it will become minus P2 upon rho g plus Z2, and it will be equal to V2 square upon 2g, and I will take V1 square upon 2g on this side, so it will be minus V1 square upon 2g, and it will be equal to V2 square minus V1 square upon 2g. Now, as you know, H is the differential head and it is equal to V2 square minus V1 square upon 2g. So from here I can say that V2 square minus V1 square, from here I am saying it, V square minus V1 square is equal to 2gh. On putting 2g on and putting 2g on this side and multiplying it with h, and next I will get V2 as 2gh plus V1 square, and it will be the square root, and h is the differential head. This head is differential and head, and it is equal to V2 square minus V1 square upon 2g. Let A naught, so I'll write it in a separate page. Let us consider that A naught is equal to the area of orifice. So just don't confuse that the section 2 was at near the orifice and the area should be same. It's not like that. The section 2 is over here, but our orifice is over here, and here our section 2 area is different than orifice. Section 2 area we are taking as A2, whereas the orifice area shall be A naught. So we are assuming that the area of orifice is A naught, and also we introduce a term that is the coefficient of contraction. It is, in short, you can write it as CC, coefficient of contraction, is equal to A2 upon A naught. It's the ratio of A2 and A naught. So if you are asked what is coefficient of contraction, you can simply say that it is the ratio of the area at the section downstream to the orifice upon to the area of the orifice. And now by continuity equation A1 V1 is equal to A2 V2. Also we know that this is the continuity equation, and in place of A2 I can write A2 as, from here, is equal to CC times A naught. Yeah, so therefore V1 is equal to A2 upon A1 times V2, and A2 can be written as CC times A naught upon A1 times V2. And again we know that V2 is equal to square root of 2gh plus V1 square. So we got V1 is equal to CC times A naught upon A1 times V2. So I'll put this value in place of this V1. Suppose this is equation 1, and this is my equation 2. So I'll write, putting equation 2 in equation 1. So what I'll get is V2 is equal to square root of 2gh plus A naught square CC square V2 square upon A1 square. So if I rearrange this one, it will be like V2 is equal to square root of 2gh upon square root of 1 minus a0 square upon a1 square times cc square. It's just simple rearrangement of this one. I will get this thing, and thus discharge, that is Q, is equal to A2 V2, and I will multiply A2 V2 as A0 C0 times V2. I have V2 and I will just multiply A0 C0 with it, and thus I will get it as A0 CC times root 2 GH upon square root of 1 minus A0 square upon A1 square times CC square. So this is what I got, and further I can write that CD is the coefficient of discharge. We know that CD is the coefficient of discharge for orifice meter, and CD is actually defined something like this. CD is equal to CC times square root of 1 minus A0 square upon A1 square upon square root of 1 minus A0 square upon A1 square times CC. So CD is basically defined something like this. So it is due to some maybe mathematical or due to some experimental results, CD and CC are related to each other like this. This is the relation between CD and CC. So from here I can write CC is equal to CD times square root of 1 minus A0 square upon A1 square times CC divided by square root of 1 minus A0 square upon A1 square. So I'll use this value of CC in this equation. In equation 3, suppose this is equation 3 and this is equation 4, and I'll be putting this in this equation. So on putting equation 4 in equation 3, we get discharge Q is equal to CD times A0 A1. So it is just, we will put this equation 4, the value of CC, in this equation 3 what we got, and it will be like A0 A1 times root 2 GH upon square root of A1 square minus A0 square. So CD is the coefficient of discharge for orifice meter, and this is the discharge through orifice meter, and A0 is the area of the orifice. So you can just consider one difference from the Venturi meter, that in Venturi meter we didn't consider something like that, we just had A1 and A2, but here we are not considering A2 but we are considering A0, that is the area of the orifice. Now after Venturi meter and orifice meter, we have another application of the Bernoulli's principle, and this is the pitot tube, and it is defined as a device which is used for measuring the velocity of flow at any point in the pipe or channel. So now we are using something advanced where we can measure the flow in a pipe at any desired point, suppose here or here or here or here. Anywhere I can measure by just placing the pitot tube. Now previously in orifice meter or the Venturi meter, we used to get it as a hole. We used to measure the flow as a hole in the pipe, but in pitot tube we will be measuring the velocity of flow at any point in the pipe or a channel. So what is the working principle of pitot tube? Pitot tube works on the principle of Bernoulli's equation, and it depends on Bernoulli's equation only. And if the velocity of flow at a point decreases, the pressure will be increased at that point due to the conversion of kinetic energy into pressure energy. Yes, that's right. If the velocity of flow at a point decreases, so at a point the velocity is decreasing, the pressure will be increased at that point due to the conversion of kinetic energy into pressure energy. So suppose the pitot tube is kept horizontally, and therefore there is no scene of elevation, and therefore I'll say that the potential energy is neglected. But energy, as you know, it can never be created nor be destroyed. So but if the velocity of flow at a point is getting reduced, it is decreases, so the kinetic energy will also reduce. So if the kinetic energy is reduced, something must compensate, and therefore the pressure energy is increased at that particular point. So this is the working principle of pitot tube. Now pitot tube will be made of a glass tube bent at right angle, somewhat like this. It's a glass tube bent at right angle as displayed in the figure below. Here is the figure. It is a glass tube and it is bent at a right angle, and we place it here in the water and we measure the rise. Now and will be directed in the upstream direction as displayed. So it will be kept in the upstream direction, means this will be facing the flow of the liquid, and due to the conversion of kinetic energy into pressure energy, the liquid will rise up. So now as the kinetic energy is being converted, as the introduction of this particular thing reduces the velocity and the liquid is forced to enter into this place, so on the reduction of this kinetic energy, there will be some pressure energy, and that pressure energy will thus help in the rise of this liquid column. Rise of the liquid level will provide the velocity of flow at any point in the pipe or a channel. Now we will go to the derivation of velocity of flow through pitot tube. So here is a diagram of the pitot tube, and here the areas are given A1, A2, and the pitot tube is placed in a pipe at a depth of h, and another rise of small h is seen above the pipe level. So I have pressure 1 and P1 and V1 at section 1, which is here, and the area is A1, which is similar to the area of the pipe, and A2 is the area at section 2, and P2, V2 are the pressure and velocity at section 2. So capital H is the depth of the tube in the liquid, and small h is the rise of liquid in the tube above the free surface. So even if it is a channel, it will be like this, and this will be the rise above the free surface. So you can consider it as a both pipe or a channel, because pitot tube is used to measure the velocity in both pipe and channel. And also note one thing, in pitot tube we measure the velocity, whereas in by using an orifice meter or a venturi meter we measure the discharge. So now just let us recall the Bernoulli's equation. So in Bernoulli's equation, in an incompressible ideal fluid, when the flow is steady and continuous, the sum of the pressure energy, kinetic energy and potential energy will be constant along a streamline. And so the assumptions which we will be taking are just similar to that of the orifice meter and venturi meter, that is the fluid is ideal, inviscid and incompressible, and the fluid is steady and continuous, the fluid is irrotational, and the inner surface is frictionless. So let's apply the Bernoulli's equation, that is P1 upon rho g plus V1 square upon 2g plus Z1 is equal to P2 upon rho g plus V2 square upon 2g plus Z2. So you can say that Z1 and Z2 are also similar, is equal to Z2. And also note one thing, that V2 is equal to 0. The velocity at this place will be almost equal to 0. So because on hitting there will be no further velocity, and totally it will be lost in eddies or something like this. So here the velocity will be almost 0. So therefore V2 is taken as 0, and I can say that P1 upon rho g is the pressure head at 1 and P2 upon rho g is the pressure head at 2. So substitute and let us consider that pressure head at 1 is equal to H and pressure head at 2 is equal to H plus small h, right? This is the H and this is the pressure head at 1, and at 2 the pressure head is H plus small h. So by substituting the values we can see that, so I'll put capital H in place of this one and I will write it as H plus V1 square upon 2g. Z1 and Z2 are cancelled out, no need to write them, is equal to P2 upon rho g is the pressure head 2, there is a pressure head at 2 and it is H plus H, and again V2 is equal to 0, therefore V2 square plus 2g has no significance in the equation, and I will not write V2 square plus 2g over here. And now I can say that capital H will be getting cancelled, and therefore V1 square is equal to 2gh. Alright, and actual velocity, and this is the theoretical velocity. So the actual velocity, that is V1 actual, will be lesser than V1 theoretical. So therefore I will introduce one term, that is V1 actual is equal to CV times root 2 GH. Also you can write it as V1 is equal to root 2 GH. So just by introduction of CV, V1 actual will be equal to CV root 2 GH, where CV is equal to the coefficient of pitot tube. So CV is known as the coefficient of pitot tube. Next is the vortex flow. In vortex flow is actually a rotating mass of fluid, and this rotating mass is known as the vortex, and the motion of the rotating mass of the fluid is called the vortex motion. So you can see this is an image of a vortex motion. This generally happens when you are rotating your half-filled water bottle. You will see this type of pattern of flow you will be seeing, like it will be a circular rotatory flow, and this rotating mass of fluid is known as the vortex, and the motion of rotating mass of fluid is called the vortex motion. So there are two types of vortex flow. That is, one is free vortex, another is forced vortex. In free vortex, the tangential velocity inversely proportional to the radius. That is, the tangential velocity at each point is inversely proportional to the radius, whereas the tangential velocity is directly proportional to the radius in the case of the forced vortex. So free vortex, no external torque or energy is required. The fluid rotating under the certain energy previously given to them. In a free vortex mechanics, overall energy flow remains constant and there is no energy interaction between the external source and the flow or any dissipation of mechanical energy in the flow. So in free vortex, there is no requirement of external force or torque. You will find the vortex, it will be occurring naturally, and the fluid rotating under the certain energy previously given to them. So previously it will be given, actually they do need some energy, and once the previous given energy is there in the vortex, so the vortex motion will be continuing almost forever, and therefore they are known as the free vortex. And between an external source and a flow or any dissipation of mechanical energy in the flow, the fluid mass rotates due to the conservation of angular momentum. So the angular momentum is conserved and hence the fluid rotates, and the velocity is inversely proportional to the radius. And for a free vortex flow, we have Vr is equal to constant, or you can write V is equal to C upon R. At the center, r is equal to 0 of rotation, velocity approaches to infinite, and that point is called the singular point. So in a free vortex, near the center, the velocity will be very much high, because if the equation is v is equal to c upon r, and the radius is almost 0 over here, so therefore the v will be tending towards infinity, and therefore the velocity approaches to infinity and at the center of rotation, and that point is called the singular point. The free vortex flow is irrotational and therefore is also known as the irrotational vortex. In free vortex flow, Bernoulli's equation can be applied, and in free vortex flow, the Bernoulli's equation can also be applied. So examples are whirlpool in a river, water flows out of a bathtub or a sink and flow in a centrifugal pump casing and flow around the circular bend in a pipe. In all these cases, you will see that you need not to give any other external force or torque. This whirling thing or the vortex motion will be occurring naturally whenever, like this is a very common example, that is the water flowing out of the bathtub or a sink. You will see that it will be occurring naturally and it will maintain a vortex motion. Next is the forced vortex motion. So you can just go by the name that there will be continuous application of torque or a force to keep the vortex in motion. So to maintain a forced vortex flow, it is required a continuous supply of energy or external torque. So you need a continuous supply of energy or external torque to maintain this forced vortex flow. All the fluid particles rotate at constant angular velocity omega as a solid body, and therefore a flow of forced vortex is called a solid body rotation. So as the angular velocity is constant, we will also call it as solid body rotation. The tangential velocity is directly proportional to the radius. Yes, and v is equal to r omega, where omega is the angular velocity and r is the radius of the fluid particle from the axis of the rotation, or you can say this is the distance of the fluid particle from the axis or the center of the rotation. The surface profile of vortex flow is parabolic, and you can see here is an example of vortex flow, and it is parabolic in nature. Omega is the rotation given to it, and this h will be obtained by omega square r upon 2g. So you know that v square is equal to 2gh, and you can write h is equal to v square upon 2g. Also v is equal to r omega. So on substituting v here as omega square r square, we will get h is equal to omega square r square upon 2g. In force vortex, total energy per unit weight increases with an increase in radius. So this is directly proportional to r, the radius. So therefore total energy per unit weight will increase with increase in radius, and force vortex is not irrotational, rather it is a rotational flow which with constant vorticity 2 omega. And the examples are the rotating vessel containing a liquid with constant angular velocity flow inside a centrifugal pump. Next we will go to the last part of the fluid dynamics chapter, that is the impulse momentum equation. And Newton's second law can be written as the rate of change of momentum of a body is equal to the resultant force acting on the body and takes place in the direction of the force. So this is, we all know that this is a Newton's second law of motion. So we will, using this one, we will derive the rate of change of momentum for a fluid and using using the one which we used in Bernoulli's equation. Now to determine the rate of change of momentum for a fluid, we will consider the fluid we had considered for the Bernoulli's equation, and we will have the stream flow as I have written. This is a stream tube basically, and P2 V2 and P1 V1 are the pressure and velocities at sections 1 and 2. A1 is the area of section 1 and A2 is the area of section 2, and this is the 3D, and this diagram is in 2D. Also note that in time delta t, a volume of the fluid moves from an inlet distance of v delta t. Suppose in time delta t, the fluid moves v times delta t, simply velocity into time, and therefore we can say that the volume entering means the volume of fluid that is entering through air here, entering the stream tube, is equal to the area times distance, and that is equal to A1 V1 delta t, as here the velocity is V1, delta t is the time, so V1 delta t is the distance and A1 is the area, cross-sectional area at this particular section. So therefore if this is the volume, simply the mass, therefore mass entering will be just multiplication of this with the density, that is rho. Suppose rho is the density and it is rho A1 U1 delta t. So in this case, just let us suppose that the density of the fluid may be changing because there is a change in the cross-sectional area, so that much as the mass can neither be created nor be destroyed, so the mass entering should be equal to the mass exiting, and therefore that much mass which was entering through air will be remaining here at after certain point. So therefore you can say that in this place the fluid particles will expand a little bit and take up the area, and therefore I will tell that rho 1 is the density over here and rho 2 is the density of the same liquid over here, though that change is practically very negligible, but I will not consider that, I will consider that change. So it is rho 1 A1 V1 times delta t, and therefore the momentum will be mass into velocity, and that is rho 1 A1 V1 delta t multiplied by V1 again. So therefore similarly you can say that momentum while leaving, that is on side 2, therefore it will be equal to rho 2 A2 V2 delta 2 times V2. So we have the momentums of the fluid entering and leaving the stream tube. Now, as you know, using second law, that the force that will be applied will be the rate of the change of momentum. So therefore the force is equal to rate of change of momentum, and this is the second law of Newton's law of motion, and F is equal to, therefore momentum at 2, that is rho 2 A2 V2 delta T times V2 minus rho 1 A1 V1 delta T times V1 upon the time taken, and that will be delta T. So again, now using the continuity equation, Q is equal to A1 V1 is equal to A2 V2. So therefore you can say the force that will be applied is equal to the discharge times density times V2 minus V1, and therefore mass into phase 1 is equal to mass out of phase 2. And also we will consider that in practical cases that rho 1 is equal to rho 2 is equal to rho, and therefore I will use only one density. In practical cases there is very less chance of change in the density, and therefore the rate of mass into phase 1 is equal to the mass out of phase 2, just by the conservation of mass principle, and therefore the rate of change of mass is equal to m, which is equal to dm upon dt, and that is equal to rho 1 a1 d1, and that is equal to rho 2 a2 v2. Therefore rate at which momentum changes will be the rate at which the momentum enters the phase 2 and momentum leaves phase 1. Suppose if the direction is reversed now, so that is rho 2 a2 v2 times v2 minus rho 1 a1 v1 times v1. This is the mass and this is the velocity. Similarly, this is the mass and this is the velocity at sections 1 and 2 respectively, and therefore it is equal to mv2 minus mv1. And since the force is the rate of change of momentum, again you can say that F is equal to m times v2 minus v1, and also like F is equal to q rho v2 minus v1. So in both cases if the fluid enters from 1 and exits to 2, or even it enters from 2 and exits to 1, we'll, in both the cases we'll get something similar to this thing, and this is known as the momentum impulse momentum equation. So let's just do some problems regarding this part of the fluid dynamics. It is given that an orifice meter with orifice dia 15 cm is inserted in pipe of dia 30 cm. The pressure difference rate by differential manometer was 50 cm of mercury. Find the rate of flow of oil, specific gravity 0.9 when CD is 0.64. So we are given a oil flowing through a particular pipe, an orifice meter is inserted to measure the rate of flow, and the pressure difference by a differential manometer at that place was read by 50 cm of mercury. So we have the dia of the orifice D0 is equal to 15 cm. Therefore A0 is equal to pi by 4 times 15 square, and that is equal to 176.7 centimeter square. Next, dia of pipe is given D1 equal to 30 centimeter, and therefore A0 will be equal to pi by 4 times 30 square, and that is equal to 706.85 centimeter square. Now we have the area of both the orifice and the pipe. Now we are given the specific gravity of oil as 0.9. So the difference, so the head that will be getting through the manometer difference will be x times Sm upon S0 minus 1, and that is equal to 13. X is given 50 centimeter, 50 times 13.6 upon S0 is given 0.9, that is the specific gravity of oil. This is the specific gravity of mercury, minus 1, and it will give me 705.5 centimeter of oil. Also CD is equal to 0.64. Note one thing. In the problems of Venturi meter, we used to have CD close to 1, that is 0.98 or 0.95, but in orifice meter problems we have CD 0.64. so that is that orifice meter, the coefficient of discharge for orifice meter is somewhat lesser than that of the Venturi meter. So you can say that in one way that the efficiency of orifice meter is lesser than that of Venturi meter. So okay, let's calculate the discharge. Q is equal to CD times A0 A1 upon square root of A0 square minus A1 square, A1 square minus A0 square times root 2 GH. So let's just keep on putting the values, like 0.64 times A0 is 176.7 times A1 is 706.85 upon square root of 706.85 square minus 176.7 square times root 2 times 9.81 times H is 705.7, and thus I will get Q as 137,414.25 centimeter cube per second, and it is equal to 137.414 liters per second. So in this question it is given that a pitot tube is inserted in a pipe of 30 cm diameter. The static pressure of the tube is 10 cm of mercury, vacuum, The stagnation pressure at the center of the pipe 1 Newton per is 19 Newton per centimeter square. Make a note. If the mean velocity of the flow is 0.85 times the central velocity, assume Cv is equal to 0.98 and calculate the rate of flow of water through the pipe. So it is a problem given about pitot tube. We could just do simple problems related to Cv times root 2 gh, that is using just a simple formula, but I thought it's better to use some good application of this particular pitot tube, and this question is such a help for that. So the solution can be written like that: P naught upon gamma, that is the pressure, is equal to P static upon gamma, and it is equal to 10 by 100 times 13.6. because the liquid is mercury, P static is 10 centimeter and 100 centimeter is the maximum possible height. So 10 into 13.6 upon 100 is our head, and it is actually minus sign as it is P static and it is also in vacuum, so it is minus 1.36 meter of water head. Next, P stagnation upon gamma is equal to 1 times 10 to the power 4 is the P stagnation upon gamma is 9810, and it is equal to 1.019 meter of water head. So now therefore delta H is equal to this P stagnation minus P static upon gamma, and that is equal to 1.019 minus of 1.36, and that is equal to 2.38 meter of water head. So the center line velocity V is equal to Cv times root 2gh, and that is equal to 0.98 times root 2 times 9.81 times h is 2.38, this 2.38. Therefore the velocity is equal to 6.697 meters per second. So the mean velocity V dash, or I can write it as V bar, is equal to 0.85 times V, as I have written in the question. Mean velocity of flow is 0.85 times the central velocity, so therefore it is 0.85 times 6.697, and that is equal to 5.69 meters per second. So finally the discharge will be Q is equal to pi by 4 times 0.3 square, this is the area, times the mean velocity, that is 5.69, and this is 0.3 because the diameter of the pipe is given 30 centimeter. So the discharge is equal to the product of all this, and it is equal to 0.402 meter cube per second. So a rectangular duct of width 25 cm has a 2D flow and it is irrotational, and it has an elbow made up of circular area. So there are two rectangular pipes and it has an elbow of circular area. This is rectangle and this is circular, and the radius of inner and outer is 40 and 60 cm respectively. Assuming the flow in elbow to be an irrotational vortex, V r equals to constant. Calculate the discharge per unit width when the difference in pressure is 30 kPa between inner and outer walls. So let's use the Bernoulli's equation by P2 upon gamma plus V2 square upon 2G plus Z2 is equal to P1 gamma plus V1 square upon 2G plus Z1. So here Z2 is equal to Z1, so I can neglect it, and V is also equal to CR, C upon R, because it is a vortex motion, because this bend will create a vortex and hence it is a vortex motion. So I can say P2 minus P1 will be equal to rho upon 2 V1 square minus V2 square. So just by eliminating the G from both the sides and P2 minus P1 keeping in one side, and just this gamma can be written as rho G, and I will be eliminating all this G. This can be written as rho. So I will just multiply rho in this side and it will be V1 square minus V2 square, and that is also equal to rho times C square upon 2, and that is 1 minus R1 square minus 1 upon R2 square, because V is equal to C upon R. So V1 will be equal to C upon R1 and V2 is equal to C upon R2. So this equation will come in this form. So P2 minus P1 is 30 times 10 to the power 3, and that is equal to 1000 times C square upon 2, and that will be multiplied by 1 time 0.4 square minus 1 upon 0.65 square. So it will be equal to 1941.56 C square, and therefore C is equal to 3.93. So therefore you can write discharge per unit width will be small q, capital Q upon V, and that is equal to small q, and this is integration of V dr, and that is integration of V dr from R1 to R2. It is integration of C upon R from R1 to R2, and upon solving this particular integration and putting R1 and R2 as 0.6 and 0.4, I'll get it as equal to 1.91 meter cube per unit width. A 5 cm dia jet of water having a velocity of 20 meter per second impinges normally on a flat vertical plate that is moving away from the jet with 8 meter per second. So we have a 5 cm dia of jet that is flowing and it is hitting on a flat plate which is moving at 8 meter per second, and this one is 20 meter per second. So we are asked to find the force on the plate. So you can see there is a change in velocity. There is a relative velocity over here. So I can use the formula, that is F is equal to Q rho V2 minus V1, and that is from, we know it is from the impulse momentum equation. So this problem is basically an application of impulse momentum equation. So first we know that F is equal to Q rho V2 minus V1, and the relative velocity V can be found out by, suppose VR, I am telling it is relative velocity VR, it is 20 minus 8, and that is equal to 12 meter per second. So the discharge, therefore the discharge Q is equal to pi by 4 times 0.05 square, this is the area, times the velocity, that is 20 minus 8, and that is 12, and therefore the discharge is equal to 0.02356 meters cube per second. So this is the discharge. Rho, as you know, it will be 1000, therefore the force will be equal to 0.02356 times 1000 times V2 is 20 minus 8, therefore it will be, the force is equal to 282.72 Newton. Next we are asked to find the work done per second. So the work done per second is basically power, and that is force times the velocity VR, and velocity it will be velocity V of the plate, and that will be equal to 282.72 times, because the plate is moving at a velocity 8 meter per second, so there is no use of taking the relative velocity. So therefore the power, the work done per second, that is the force times velocity or the power, is equal to 282.72 times 8, and that is equal to 2.26 kilowatt. So that was all about fluid dynamics. So if you have any kinds of doubt, please do not hesitate to write in the comment section, and also you will get the notes and the link for the first part of this video in the description. And also like and share my video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Thank you.